The last thing I would like for you to think about in the context of the politics of history of colonial slavery and then subsequent antebellum slavery is the miniseries Roots, which originally aired between January 23rd and January 30th, 1977. It remains one of television's landmark programs. Um, it was 12 hours in length, and and actually ABC, which created the miniseries, had real qualms about it because it had almost no sympathetic white characters. Most white characters in the miniseries were just outright villains, and all the heroes were African and African American, and it's very much a story about how um, an African Americans sort of struggled for their own freedom. So this struck executives as potentially problematic, and so because ABC executives initially feared that this historical saga could be a ratings disaster, they scheduled it to air on 8 consecutive nights, so that it would end before Sweeps Week. And Sweeps Week is a term for a week in which the most important data on audience share and number of viewers would be collected by a company called Nielsen, a firm that specialized in collecting this data and exerted enormous influence because companies based the amount of money that they were willing to pay for a commercial on a given TV program on these Nielsen ratings. So the higher the ratings, the more money a TV network would make. And the fear was that if the Roots was aired during Sweeps Week, it would have lousy ratings, and then this would make ABC network look bad. So this is the rationale for airing it on 8 consecutive nights, which is really an unusual arrangement. Instead, Roots scored higher ratings than any previous entertainment program in history. On average, 80 million people watched each of the first 7 episodes, and 100 million viewers, almost half the country, saw the final episode. Overall, a stunning 85% of all television homes saw all or part of this miniseries. And after each episode, the next day at work or whatever, people would be talking about what they had seen in the previous episode. They'd be talking about the scenes that they had seen, what had unfolded, and so forth. I was a senior in high school when this thing came out, and I can remember us, just talking about it, with a great deal of excitement and involvement because it as drama. It was just extraordinarily well done, and so it enjoyed unusual social acclaim for a television show. That's for sure. Indeed, over 250 colleges and universities actually planned courses on the Roots saga. And then there were over 30 cities, for whatever reason or another, declared Roots weeks. The program generally had rave reviews from film critics or television critics. Black and white critics alike praised Roots for presenting African American characters who were not tailored to suit white audiences. These were very much unabashed, African and African American characters who basically took an almost sort of, I guess, almost in your face attitude, I suppose, toward the white characters in the miniseries. And in any event, this critical acclaim echoed the show's resounding popular success. And ultimately, this critical acclaim included over 30 Emmy Awards, and numerous other distinctions. So so Roots really is a remarkable landmark in television history, and in terms of the politics of history, a kind of something kind of interesting to think about, because because the audience is looking at, you know, just about all white villains and then just about all, black heroes. um, One might suppose that Roots would generate racial division. Instead, my recollection of it is that it gave whites uh, a kind of a better sense of a better understanding of enslavement and the experiences of the enslaved, which I think hitherto had been something of an abstraction to many white Americans. Now, why is this? Well, okay, here we go. The the main reason for this, I think, or an important reason for this, is that it's centered on a family. We can all relate to family life, and the family is specifically that of Kunta Kinte, who's shown here as a newborn with his mother and father, and they live on the west coast of near the west coast of Africa, in a region called Gambia. And over the 8 nights that the miniseries aired, you know, this huge television audience saw Kunta Kinte captured around 1750 and then forced into slavery. But also the audience saw Kunta Kinte become a husband and a father. And then it saw Kunta Kinte's daughter born into slavery, never knowing any freedom at all. So, you think about having your daughter, having one of your children, just automatically consigned to slavery. And then imagine that daughter being sold to an owner who took her far away, and Kunta Kinte and his wife never saw their daughter again. And then imagine following the story of the daughter, whose name was Kizzy, and discovering that the man who had purchased her sexually abused her, sexually assaulted her, raped her, in fact, and that she became pregnant. And this pregnancy produced a son, the grandson of Kunta Kinte. And the miniseries concluded on its 8th night with the family's achievement of freedom after the Civil War and the son's successful effort to defend that freedom against marauding members of the Ku Klux Klan. So you're looking at 3 generations of an American family that happened to be African during the time of slavery. Now, the miniseries had the entire country talking about its numerous dramatic episodes, as I've said, but perhaps there's none so searing as the one in which Kunta Kinte is forced to answer to the name Toby, a name selected for him by his new master.
I want to hear you say your name. Your name is Toby. What's your name?
Kunta.
Lord God help that boy. They're gonna whip him dead.
What's your name? Say it. Toby. Who are you? Say your name. What's your name?
Toby.
Hi. Say it again. Say it louder so they all can hear you. What's your name?
Toby. My name is Toby.
Hi. That's a good nigger. Cut him down.
Now, Roots came out in 1977. At that particular time, I mean, even today, I think you can see that it was a really courageous um, undertaking. And the people who were involved with it, believed in it deeply. There were major television actors at that particular time who worked at scale, not taking not very much money, lending their sort of their fame, the fact that audiences could recognize them, from other television series, in order to draw viewers into watching the miniseries, and then also being cast against type, so that many of these actors ordinarily played noble and heroic figures and sympathetic figures and so forth, and in this one, it's all flipped on their head. They're just terrible people. Vic Morrow, the overseer who was presiding over the whipping of Toby, was best known as a heroic World War II sergeant who commanded a squad, and in a series called Combat that I used to watch, and it was very well regarded. So you talk about a courageous, people believe. And the reason why I want to say courageous, though, beyond it, is, it was really also unflinching in the language that it was willing to employ. You heard what is euphemistically called, the N word used in that particular scene, and that wasn't unusual. That word was used over and over and over again. I'm not sure you could do that again in terms of broadcast television. Maybe you could do it in streaming video or something along those kinds of lines. But I don't know that we live in a time in which it's considered to be acceptable to use that word, that vile word, publicly, no matter what the context might be. One can nevertheless ask, at the end of the day, how Roots as a miniseries influenced race relations. Certainly, one could say, because the evidence is there, that that it caused white viewers to understand the experience of slavery in empathetic terms. But this didn't necessarily translate into, well, now that I've seen this, I'm going to do something about racism. At about the same time that Roots, the miniseries, aired, there was talk about making Martin Luther King's birthday a national holiday. And I remember this too. And nowadays, we have thoroughly domesticated Martin Luther King, so that he's kind of a national, hero to all, and it's kind of, people look at him and it's like, well, why can't Black Lives Matter be like Martin Luther King? Because he was this gentle soul who talked about content of our character and is eloquent and all this kind of thing. At the time, King was considered to be the most dangerous man in the country, and I'm not kidding. The director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, viewed him as literally the most dangerous person in the country. Had the FBI investigate him, sort of shadow him from one place to the next. The CIA looked at him as for his possible and sort of agency and foreign conspiracies and so forth. So and this sense of King's dangerousness had not really gone away even in the decade or so that had passed since his assassination in April of 1968. And I can remember conversations going on about making Martin Luther King birthday a national holiday. I can remember my classmates talking about that one, and a lot of them just didn't like the idea of it at all. Viewed it in terms of what would now be called political correctness. And there were a number of states that pushed back against its being made a federal holiday by, for example, making a Confederate Memorial Day on the same day as Martin Luther King's birthday. So so we are left at the end of the day, with what I hope is a complex picture of the politics of history using colonial slavery as a case study. And again, I want to caution you against leaping to a conclusion that this side is right and that side is wrong or whatever. That's an easy way to approach things, but ultimately it is an intellectually sterile way of approaching things, because it sacrifices our opportunity to delve into things and to look at things in a more nuanced and complex, and I think ultimately richer fashion.